Steve Gardner, kind enough to join us. Does a great job covering baseball for USA Today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. How you been, Steve?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'll tell you, I'm excited once you get pitchers and catchers. We've got a ton to talk about throughout the season, so I look forward to you hopping on board and doing this a lot more during this season as well. You had such great insight, so it's always appreciated. You know, I was having this conversation with Josh in the listening audience about 20 minutes or so ago. When you look at a guy like Darvish's deal, and then there's still a pitcher out there in Arrieta, and that's Boris's client, is there a reason why some of these guys have not signed some of these deals? Did they overreach? Did they overread the market? Did they overvalue the market? Or is this more of the analytical guys are now telling some of these GMs, listen, let's not pay these guys for what they did. You know, let's get away from that. Hence, you're not going to get that 6-7 year kind of type of contract, you know, $120 million over 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I think the thinking has changed among general managers. You know, we've got a newer generation of general managers, and the old baseball lifers aren't the ones that are running the show for the most part. And so that's what the focus is. You want to get value from contracts. You don't want to be stuck with an albatross in the final years of deals. And I think that's what, you know, people are looking at in general in this free agent market this offseason. They don't want to pay, and because everybody doesn't want to pay, you know, it's kind of like a competition. You know, you don't want to have a bad deal, and so nobody else is really making the moves. And we've seen a lot of the Mets have been particularly effective, it seems to me, in getting those short-term deals and actually spending some money where nobody really seems to want to spend a whole lot of money this offseason. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think Rob Manfred yesterday said something along the lines of, you know, everything is working out just the way that it is according to the current collective bargaining agreement, which kind of it seemed like to me he was saying, ha, 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 ha.
Exactly.
And that was his implied comment there. So it's tough for the players right now, and definitely the teams have the upper hand.
Yeah, they do, and I know that the Players Association, they've voiced, they've been very vocal about their dissatisfaction because it's been a quiet off-season, quiet market for some of these players. But ultimately, I don't think there's any collusion. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I also think it has to do with next year, the big-time free agents. So, again, it's not to say some of these players that are out there are not important to the game. They are. But like Arrieta, for instance, and I know, you know, to bring it back in our backyard with the Phillies for a second, I didn't like the Darvish deal because I don't want to pay someone 20-something odd million when they're in their 30s. I just don't. So a guy like Arrieta, if he thinks he's going to get those kind of dollars, he's not. Now, if I'm the Phillies, do I put a call in the Boras and say, okay, how about a 3 or 4 year deal? To me, that's a little more, I can swallow that a little more. I'm okay with that. But I just find, you know, I think the longer he's out there, he's not going to really have a lot of, I don't want to say offers, but he's not going to be able to really negotiate as much because he's looking to get employed. He's looking for a job.
Right, and as some of these other guys, you know, the Jason Vargases of the world and the Andrew Kashners, as those guys sign, they're taking up rotation spots that could go to Jake Arrieta. And not that any of the teams that sign those guys would be necessarily looking to sign Arrieta, but, you know, the number of jobs that are available and rotation spots that are available keep going down. And, you know, say the Twins sign somebody, you know, they need another pitcher, and they could be a contending team. Arrieta could make a difference for them, but as long as, you know, maybe they go in a different direction, sign somebody, you know, for a lesser contract, then that lops off, you know, another possible destination for him. I will say one thing, though, Rich, is that when major league teams, you know, they're talking about the market and what the market will bear, these teams, their revenues are rising much faster than player salaries are. And every single team, all 30 of them, got a flat $50 million from the sale of Major League Baseball's advanced media. And that money is going right into their pockets, and they can do whatever they want with them. They're not using that extra money to pay players right now.
Okay, so what about when you look at a team like the Yankees? So as much as the Yankees probably like Darvish, they weren't handcuffed by the luxury tax. So that they what you're saying is they had some money that they could have used, as opposed to the $197 million luxury tax.
Well, no, the Yankees, I think, are in a different ballpark because they're bumped up against that luxury tax, and we know that they're going to look at possibly signing Manny Machado next year. I think the Yankees are maybe a separate case.
Okay.
But, there's only one team that's going to sign Machado. There's only one team that's going to sign Bryce Harper next year. What about the other 28?
Right.
Are they waiting, pushing all their eggs into one basket that they get to be the team that gets Bryce Harper, or are they just using that as cover for not spending this offseason?
When you look at the NL East, and we've talked about this before, everyone believes Washington's still going to be the front runner, and then it's like throw a dart with the rest of these teams. You look at the Phillies and their starting rotation. I still think they need to go out and try to get another arm. Now, I thought they made a kind of an under-the-radar move with Hutchinson, which, again, if you believe he can kind of return to some form from a couple years ago with the Blue Jays, he'll push for a rotation spot. But if you look at their starting rotation, or the guys in the mix right now, Eichhoff, Velasquez, who logs a ton of innings, Pivetta, Lively, Thompson, Eflin, Mark Leiter Jr., and then Aaron Nola. I mean, is that a starting rotation when Kapler comes up with his 5 and then the middle relief and then his bullpen? Is that a starting rotation that's enough to take this team from 66, 70 wins to, say, 500 ball, 80, 82 wins?
I think it's close. And I think because, maybe not the starting rotation, that may not be the strength of the team, but I think the rest of the team is improved, and I think they can – if those starters can just get the ball to the bullpen, and I think we'll see, maybe some tandem starters, we'll see some interesting ways of managing a pitching staff from Gabe Kapler. That's at least that's what I think he will end up doing. So being creative is one thing, and maybe if they get an opportunity to sign someone, an Alex Cobb or somebody like that, and the price comes down to where they're comfortable, looking to make the move toward competing maybe a year earlier than possibly the window is and the plan is for them next year, it wouldn't surprise me if they decide to do that. I mean, they went out and signed Carlos Santana, which, for a position that they already had Rhys Hoskins.
I like that move. But I like that move because you have to add another bat in that lineup, especially in that sandbox. And his strikeouts have gone down, his average has gone up, and his home runs have gone up.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so you give yourself options, and I think that's what they're doing with that pitching staff. And maybe if there's a free agent still out there that they can get and make that pitching staff a little bit deeper, because Velasquez has had trouble staying healthy, and the rest of those guys are question marks. It would really help them, I think. And
I see what Kapler is going to do with Roman Quinn. Because they want to stress really defensive versatility. And I think they have a young infield, and they've got some very athletic, solid gloves all around, so they'll work them out at shortstop. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this because you can experiment in February and March. You're not going to do it in April, right? I mean, so
sure.
to go to your point, what should the fan base expect with Kapler? Like, is this something that's unorthodox, outside the box, more of the analytical, more of the sabermetrics, more of, okay, well, you're 3 of 13 and your average has dropped to 138 against lefties, so guess what? You're sitting this series. I mean, is it more on the fly? Like, what should we expect here with Kapler?
No, I think he's a very studious guy, a student of the game. He looks at things differently and likes to take a look at things from all different angles. I mean, I can remember interviewing him as a player and was really impressed with some of the insights that he had even then. So with all the knowledge, with the front office and a lot of the new analytics that have come into the game since then, I think he's willing to experiment. And you've got a team that doesn't have a whole lot of expectations. So with that in mind, you're able to do things like, okay, let's see if Roman Quinn can play some infield. And we've got a good outfield already, and he may not ever get a chance to crack that outfield. So how about trying some, something different? And I think we will see some experimentation and things like that maybe you wouldn't have seen on a Phillies team for a long, long time. And I think that's good. There's not a whole lot to lose at this point. And if you find something that works, great, you can stick with it. If not, maybe you try something different.
Can the same be said with Mickey Callaway in New York, who's just bringing the positive vibes and the smiles and everyone, even if you get shelled over 8 innings or 7 innings, you're still going to get a hug and a pat on the tushy and well done. There's not going to be any timeouts. I mean, his job, let's be honest, with his pedigree, his job is to just basically manage the pitching staff and just keep them healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And it hasn't seemed, at least looking at it from afar, it hasn't seemed fun to be a New York Met these last couple of years since the World Series year. So I think that is something, and we see teams do that. You and I have talked about this an awful lot in the past about how different types of managers from one to the next have completely different personalities because maybe this one style of managing wears thin and you get a player's manager, and then after that you have a more disciplinarian type guy. And I think this is a way to kind of change the culture a little bit and get people. I think bringing in Todd Frazier coming in to play third base for the Mets, a great clubhouse guy. I think that was an excellent move for them. So I kind of trashed the Mets early in the off season for not looking to spend a whole lot of money or anything like that, but I have to tell you, I've been really impressed with some of the things they've been able to do, and Mickey Callaway as a new manager, I think, is also a very good move for them. So it's not all gloom and doom in Metsdom these days.
Well, you got DeGrom, you got Wheeler, you got Match, you got Syndergaard. You know what to expect. I mean, some of them have suffered some of the injuries, but you see the workhorse that is Syndergaard, and then you talk about a guy in Harvey. I mean, this is really it for him, to be honest with you. And I know Callaway's been able to help in the past with that staff at Cleveland. I mean, essentially helped Kluber win 2 Cy Young awards. I don't think you're going to get that from Harvey this year, but, to me, that's where the challenge is. I mean, years ago, he was the talk in New York, right? He was the catalyst. He was their number one. And now it's almost like, well, if he's healthy and you can get, 30 appearances from him this year, then you'll take it. I mean, he has fallen so off the radar. It's remarkable.
Yeah, and the thoracic outlet syndrome is no small thing to come back from. And he needs to have, his mechanics maybe need to be refined so that he's not putting stress on his arm and his elbow and anything else there. So I think Callaway's a good guy to try and get him back on track. But, I think that was the big news as the pitchers and catchers were reporting to Mets camp in Port St. Lucie, is that they do not need Matt Harvey to be the Dark Knight. They need him to just be a guy who they can count on every fifth day to throw some innings, keep them in the ball game, and let the rest of the players do their job and not win it on his own, which, he could do that a couple of years ago, but he's definitely not that pitcher anymore.
Steve Gardner joining us on a Friday on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Does a great job covering baseball for USA Today. What were your thoughts? I would love to see Lincecum come back in the bigs, and I know there was about 10 or 11 teams. They had scouts out there. I mean, do you believe he's got something left? Is it a situation where he might not be a starter, but if he has an invite to spring training, maybe you're talking long relief, and then maybe until he finds his groove again? But by all accounts, he was firing in the other day.
Yeah, the velocity seemed to be there, at or maybe even a tick above what he was throwing when he was last in the game. I think he's a great personality for baseball, and if he's in the game, it's better. And so I would love to see Tim Lincecum make a comeback. I don't know that he's going to ever be anywhere close to the dominant Cy Young kind of pitcher he was, but if he can just be a lot of similarities with Matt Harvey, and I think he's probably best suited. Remember when the Giants were in the playoffs and Lincecum was like the Mr. Super reliever guy? Yep. I think he could be a great addition to anybody's pitching staff if he can do that kind of 2 or 3 innings in the middle of the game, keep them in the game, and provide those kinds of innings. I think he could be an effective guy. But whether he wants to do that and whether he will get a chance to do that, I guess, are different things as well.
I know it's total apples and oranges, but when I look at him, the first pitcher I think of, and he's had 3 times the career this guy did because of the injuries as well. But I think of the Bird. I think of Fidrich. I just think how he burst on the scene with the hair, the floppiness, 19-game winner back in '76. Lincecum, too. He had that stretch where 18, the back-to-back Cy Youngs. I mean, obviously,
yes.
totally different. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to compare, but just the personalities, the look, the demeanor. And you're right. He is good for baseball. What do you make of Ohtani? We had a couple guys text in because the curiosity with this player, to me, it's remarkable because imagine a guy goes out there and he wins 18 and then he also hits 25 home runs in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Ohtani is by far the most fascinating story going into 2018. And because, we've never seen anything like him. And I do know, and this is secondhand information, but a guy that I know, his brother is a scout, and scouted Ohtani in Japan and said, this guy is flat out the best baseball player I have ever seen. So, I mean, he's got speed, he can hit, he can pitch. And I think because – yes, it's not a great investment in terms of dollar amount that the Angels have put into him because they didn't have to pay the huge price tag, but how valuable he is. We're not going to see everything that Ohtani can do. They're not going to let him steal bases. They're not going to have him in the lineup every day that he's not pitching, but he could be. I mean, we could see it's funny. We were talking about this last night around the office, is that the greatest thing that they could do to make an impact with Ohtani would be to have him be an everyday player as a hitter and be a closer and use those skills to where he could be in the lineup pretty much every single day and impact the game almost 162 games he could potentially have an impact. I think that would be fascinating, but he does want to start, and I think that's where his greatest single value is to a team and to the Angels. But to be able to let this guy loose and be able to do everything possible would be it would be an amazing thing to behold, and it'll still be special. But I can't wait to see him. I'm going to go out to Arizona in another week, and that's going to be the first place I go is Angels camp, just to see what this guy does and how he can do so many different things so well.
You have to let me know, though, if Sosa tells him, listen, no head first slides. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure that's probably already been.
That is completely forbidden already. I'm sure.
All right. Yeah, I just think it is. I mean, everyone wants to know, how do you engage a younger audience with the sport? Well, now you got a little international appeal, a little international flair and flavor, and they call him what Japan's Babe Ruth. I just think it's going to be remarkable because, I mean, what happens again if whether he's comes out of the bullpen or say he wins 12 or 15 games, just hypotheticals, and he hits 25 home runs. I don't know how that would all have to come together, but we've never seen anything like this. We've had pitchers in the past that can hit home runs, and Kerry Wood was one of those guys as well. Rick White, we've seen it before, but something like this to me is just so brand new, and the curiosity factor is like a 10 with me, just to watch and obviously to watch Trout, but now you have this new element.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And the other thing too, Rich, is I think that this may open some people's eyes to other players that could possibly do both. And, the Rays have a guy by the name of Brendan McKay who can hit and pitch, and they're letting him do both in the minor leagues. Wouldn't it be great if it kind of starts a trend and we get to see guys who can do both, possibly follow in his footsteps and do this at the major league level?
Who knows? Maybe he throws a no-no and hits a grand slam in the same game. So again, we don't know yet. We will do overs and unders next week. So start doing your homework. I'll get. When are you going to officially do your 2018? When you guys do that, the predictions?
We've done some preliminary win totals. I think we had that out maybe a week or so ago.
I saw that. Okay.
Staff. Yes.
All right.
So that's the first step, I guess.
All right. So I'll hold you to them next week. All right. Listen, always appreciate it, Steve. Great stuff, pal. Appreciate you jumping on board.
You bet. Thanks, Rich.
All right. You got it. Steve Gardner from USA Today on baseball.